Semdol kake mofaseda.
Hey, welcome to Talking in Stations. I am Adderall, news chief for for TMC, and also Imperium.news. Today's show, we have a very special program. We're doing it in the middle of the week because some huge news came out about CCP's stance on gambling, or games of chance, as they call it. And we're just going to get right to the topic, introduce these guys, and see what we can find out about what happened and what's going to happen in the future. So first we'll start with Eric.
You're going to start with me?
Yeah, I'm just going to go left to right.
Hey, I'm Eric. What are we going to talk about? Want me to talk about the whole ordeal?
Well done. No, actually, I just want to know who you are so that people understand who you are, and then they can relate to the voice and stuff.
Cool.
Well, Eric, I'll introduce Eric then. Eric does a lot of stuff for TMC Twitch, and he's actually does a lot of shows like the Whiskey Gaming Show, and also does a lot of stuff for H1Z1, I believe. Ash Drothy?
Yep, that's right. Sorry about that.
No, it's no problem. It's your first time on the show. Ash Drothy.
Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ash Sharathi, and I am the CEO of Aderon Robotics and writer for Crossing Zebras and podcaster for On Grid podcast, High Drag podcast, Talking Stations podcast, anybody else who will have me on.
We have a guest that hopefully we'll see a lot of in the future, Elise Randolph.
Hey everyone, I'm Elise Randolph. I'm a member of Pandemic Legion, and also I do Talking Station podcast with no, I don't.
No, you don't.
Podcast with Ash Sharathi, and I do work with EVE RMT for their EVE Sports stuff, which hopefully you guys will be able to tune into very soon.
As a side note, when there isn't an On Grid out tomorrow, this podcast is the reason why. So we hope to do one very soon, but we decided that this was more important.
Yeah, and by the way, this should really be a Talking in Stations / On Grid presentation, because we have both Elise and Ash Sharathi here today. Okay, and Urziel down there.
I'm Urziel99, a member of Multiplex Gaming, part of the Bastion. Been on numerous podcasts and this show more than once.
Right, you used to do a lot of Podside, right?
Yeah.
Great, and our very special guest today, we're very happy to have them, are two people in the center of the basically ban wave and new rules from CCP, and I'll go ahead and start with Aderix from EVE Casino.
Hey, how are you guys? Aderix here from Evil at Work, and yeah, we also run EVE Casino, so that's kind of who I am.
Great, and lastly but not least is Eep, who's been on the show a few times, and we're glad to have him. And he is the owner, founder, and builder of I Want ISK. And he is having trouble with his push to talk.
He's speechless.
You can take it off push to talk if you like, if that helps. And so he was helping out earlier. We'll hear from him in just a second, but Ash Sharathi, why don't you tell us what dropped today and why it's so significant? And I just want to set it up by saying this is probably second to the EVE going into free-to-play mode as far as biggest story of the year. So go ahead, Ash, tell us what's going on.
Yeah, I definitely describe this as the second most important or biggest change in recent memory. The first being, of course, the transition to alpha clones. But what we received today was a new dev blog, which is a change to the EULA, the End User License Agreement for EVE Online. And where most of the changes are actually fairly predictable and related to alpha clones. For instance, according to the EULA, you couldn't play past your account, unless you were paying for it. So now they've changed that verbiage to make it so that you can continue to play for free even after your trial has expired. However, they put in the verbiage that basically says that they can ban you if you try to connect with more than one account that you don't pay subscriptions for. So that way they handle that you can only be signed in with one alpha clone at a time. There's a bunch of other little tiny details when it comes to that here and there. But the big change, the change that we weren't directly expecting, is in section B, selling of items and objects. They have added in the line, you may not use, transfer, or assign any game assets for games of chance operated by third parties. And this change, with one sentence, effectively shuts down most, if not all, of gambling in EVE Online. And while that may or may not seem like a really big deal to the uninitiated, gambling in EVE has a long tradition, ever going all the way back to alliances doing fundraising through raffles, to the establishment of Summer Blink, I Want ISK, EVE Bet, all these kinds of institutions. They have been a huge force in allowing community projects to exist. And more recently, of course, they've been making a big deal because of funding World War B or the Casino War, or whatever you want to call it, and other kind of operations. These people who have ran these gambling websites have accumulated large amounts of ISK and have been doing things with that ISK. So even just that change alone would be fairly significant and disruptive to kind of the normal way that EVE operates and the community operates. But on top of that, I Want ISK specifically has been implicated, supposedly, allegedly, in RMT. Their leaders have been banned. Their assets have been seized. So this is a big deal because I Want ISK was actually originally banned at the beginning of the year, but then that ban was overturned after an investigation, and obviously they were able to then fund the rest of World War B and other stuff. And now it appears that they are well and truly dead. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And thankfully we have Eep from I Want ISK to discuss kind of the impact on him, and Aldrich to discuss the larger effects.
You're right. Before we go to that, we'll give everybody a chance to have plenty of time to talk. I want to ask, Eric seems to know about this, and so does Urziel. Can you tell us what the environment is like out there? Because this isn't happening in a vacuum. CCP didn't just say gambling is gone from EVE. There are lawsuits out there for other games. Is that right?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, when you looked at what happened with Valve, what happened with Steam, and all of those other games, right? People have been changing their EULAs to avoid this sort of issue.
Right.
This is a risk mitigation move by CCP. That's all it can be interpreted as.
Well, there's some punitive aspects to it as well, but we'll get into that in a second. Go ahead, Urzio.
Yeah, I was going to say, of course, the big news is, of course, the betting ring, the CSGO scandal that ended up having Valve get dragged into it and them starting to see legal action. And then there was a case with FIFA 16. There were some third-party websites that would gamble in that game's virtual currency. And as well, the UK Gambling Commission put out a white paper regarding virtual currencies and how they would perceive the things. And this use of ISK satisfies like 3 out of 4 of their requirements for being, money's worth. So so you've got a lot more focus on this issue from both litigation side and government regulators. So yeah, I agree with Eric that they're definitely pulling a CYA here.
So if I can understand this, and maybe this will help other people, there's a baseline here of saying as of November 8th, when the new expansion hits, we're no longer going to allow any, and it says right there in red on screen, games of chance being operated using or being affiliated with EVE. That's the baseline, and that's why EVE.bet has until then to kind of wind up their activities, because there's a lot of money being bet in the Alliance tournament at the moment and stuff like that. But in these two cases, which would be EVE Casino and I Want ISK, there was bans handed out and the whole structure was frozen. And wondering, like, what's different about those situations. Let me get Eep back in here. So we're wondering what's different about your situation. Maybe we can start with Adarix on this. Like, why did you guys? First of all, what happened to you? What's going on with you guys?
Testing.
Yeah, good. We can hear you, Eep.
Hello, everybody.
All right, so we're going to go to Adarix first. He's going to tell us what situation he's facing at the moment.
So basically, of course, as mentioned on the post, they mentioned that third-party service EVE Casino has been shut down in-game, and all ISK and assets have been confiscated after multiple and sustained breaches of our DLA. Permanent account suspensions have been issued against these involved. Now, before I get into what they exactly posted, right above it, it says, with this in mind, as of this announcement, we take action against 2 organizations that are currently offering third-party services. I want to remind everybody, I don't know if they are aware, but we are not open, and we have not been open. So we're not offering anything. We're not, so I don't know where that came into existence there. But furthermore, the DLA focuses around Crest and SSO, which, number one, of course, not being open, but neither one of those things are anywhere close to, of course, our platform or engines in regard to EVE Casino. So I myself am very, very confused to where these violations are drawn, or breaches, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Your defense is that you didn't use the API?
No, the DLA specifically relates to the SSO, the single sign-on, and that's kind of what it was regarding, from what that statement looks like, and which I've inquired to get more details, which I'm still waiting on.
So you're being banned. Is it just you that's banned?
As far, I mean, I can speak for myself. So as of myself, yes.
Do you know of anybody else that's banned in your organization?
Not that I'm completely aware of, though.
Okay. Essentially, you're being banned for using EVE's API for your site that hasn't opened yet and hasn't really broken any rules yet. So that's why you're confused on why you actually got banned.
Well, not necessarily. Well, because it's not really about the API, because we don't use. I mean, it's about the single sign-on. You know, the little
right.
button that
Crest.
we don't even have that. Yeah, like Crest. We don't even use any of that. So, from that standpoint, it's very confusing to where that was drawn. Because to sign up, you use an email. We were going to use in-game chats, but we haven't even opened, so we haven't even had an opportunity to cross any of those lines.
You got arrested before you broke the law. I got it. Actually, but what's a little clear is I Want ISK's situation, because they basically came out and said you're banned for RMT.
Yeah, that's what they said. Banned for RMT. That's what they've always said.
And just to be clear, who is banned and to what extent?
Currently, just the leadership of I1ISK, which is me, I1ISK, Iron Bank, and Lenny.
Right, and I think all their characters are banned, right?
Yeah, that and I think over 100 people's accounts were zeroed out.
Zeroed out means all their money was taken, all their liquid ISK was evaporated.
Yes, and according to some of the pictures they posted on, was their Twitter account, a total of 29 trillion ISK.
Wow. How much out of your, because you have a corporation, that's what I Want ISK runs out of, how much money was liquidated from there?
Believe it or not, only about 6 or 7 trillion. Oh, 8 trillion.
Only. That's what puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Okay, so that's how much was taken out of the I Want ISK bank.
Yeah.
So what happened? I mean, you're obviously stunned, right? I mean, I was in the TeamSpeak when you arrived, and you were like, what the hell or what the fuck have I woken up to?
Yeah, those are my words exactly. I mean, I'm still stunned. I don't think it's hit me yet. Like, yeah, I don't think it's hit me yet.
Right.
Just so that everyone's aware of like the sheer implications of what this means. This means that EEP and Iron Bank if the bans stay, that means that not only those characters, but all subsequent characters are basically banned from the game. They don't ban characters; they ban players. So, you know, what if the accusations are well founded, then that's one thing. But you know, basically, this is this is like you just can't play EVE anymore, and that's it. It's a fairly dramatic decision, obviously.
Not that I played EVE much to begin with anymore. After you have that much, you don't really play it anymore. But the one thing I want to do is just give people back their ISK. At least all the people that were playing on the site, give them back their ISK.
For us, I also want to add, like, I mean, it's important for us to get this resolved because this affects all of our other fan sites. We have several things in the work. We built that voice recognition software for EVE Online data, as well as from countless learning softwares and other things that we're rolling out. And we had everything lined up, and this is kind of all put a big roadblock in our way. So hopefully, you know, we can get everything resolved. And, you know, we entrust CCP. They'll be thorough with their investigations and hopefully get this resolved as soon as possible.
Well, this has happened in the past, and they've been reversed. So it's not unprecedented to get out of a mess that looks this permanent.
I also want to just ask, I assume that both of you both adamantly deny that you were participating in RMT?
We weren't even open.
I was reading some stuff. Was that a question?
Yeah, so you do deny the fact that you were doing RMT, right?
Yeah, of course. I assume that it's somebody else. But I really highly doubt that Iron and Lenny were. And those were the other two that were banned, so I have no idea.
So one of the interesting things that were brought to my attention during this discussion was that Iron Bank was doing a lot of giveaways on his streams, including potentially doing giveaways to subscribers only. Do you know if that was true?
Well, I know that at one point streamers were allowed to do that, and that at one point they may not have been. So I know that he followed that very closely, and he always obeyed the law. So, or you know, the CCP law. And if they told him he couldn't, he wouldn't, or he didn't.
Yeah, a while ago there was, I guess probably about a year or so, people were doing subscriber-only giveaways, and CCP said, you know what, you guys can't do subscriber-only giveaways. If you're doing giveaways, everyone has to have an equal chance. So that was the ruling for that. As for Iron Stream, I believe he just had like a sort of winning ISK game show thing. Like you just pick a box, and if you win, you get ISK. If you don't, you get other stuff.
Yeah, you mean Iron Bank? I think you said
Oh
Iron
yeah,
Stream.
sorry.
Yeah. Wait, that's kind of a neat, you know, maybe he can morph into Iron Stream and start over again. I would.
Yeah, I have some plans in place, definitely, but...
Yeah, actually, I wanted to talk about that next. You actually wrote something on your site. Since you don't have access to your mail list because that's all in-game and your character is banned, what's the status of your corporation right now?
The corporation in-game has been disbanded and all characters have been kicked out of the corporation.
But it still exists, right? Because it seems like people are still putting money into I Want ISK in order to gamble.
It does not exist in game. I don't know if you can link it in game. I'm sure it's possible that if you can, that some people have actually sent some ISK in. But the reason people are playing so much right now is because we've been giving out a bunch of promo codes just for the hell of it, for people to constantly play, even though they know it's not going to come to them.
So right now people are playing for fun, but they're not able to put money into the I Want ISK Corporation because that place is locked up. Does CCP allow donations? I mean, people to put money into it?
You probably can't still put money into it.
Well, that to me seems like a bad idea then, because if people think they're gambling in a gambling site that has been shut down and the corporation has been disbanded, that money is going into a black hole right now.
Yeah, and as well as all the money that they took from people on the website. I mean, there's a total of, I think there was a total of 3 or 4 trillion ISK of people trying to withdraw.
Yeah, I saw a screenshot of a guy who had just put in his request for 101 billion ISK to be removed last night.
Damn, man. You know, it upsets me a lot. Mostly, the thing that upsets me the most is that all these players are losing their ISK. Because what am I losing? I don't even play EVE, and trust me, I don't make any money from this. Because if I did, I'd have a fucking nice car, and I wouldn't be 2 months behind on my bills, and my rent's coming up now. I have to move, and I've been having to move for about 2-3 months. I've just been struggling. But hey, you know, here I am RMTing, and I should be okay.
Yeah, sorry to hear that.
Thanks.
But the
Like,
but is there a character still in the corporation that belongs to CCP? I heard that rumor.
that's possible if, according to programming, they may need a character for a corporation to exist. Yeah.
So they would just take over the character. I see.
Well, I know that confiscated ISK goes to 2 different accounts. I think it's called GMX and GMY. Maintains most of the confiscated ISK from RMT stuff historically.
Mm-hmm. And I understand people. I understand them banning the site under suspicions of RMT. But what happened to Aderix and EVE Casino and all his other apps? He got banned for apparently using Crest when he never did. I mean, that makes no sense.
Well, are either of you gonna fight this in any way?
Well, like I said, I have. What am I gonna do? Get more risk by winning? I mean, I don't even play EVE. I think I'm just gonna break off into other projects, turn I1ISK into a free-to-play, fun-to-play, non-EVE related website, and do something, make games.
For us, I mean, we do think that they'll be able to research this and realize, hey, we weren't in violation in terms of using anything. I mean, gosh, we weren't even open. So from that standpoint, there wasn't any action interaction with the login. I mean, we all had admin login, so there was no need for anything in that regard. All the data was all hand entered. So from that side, there was no Crest interaction or anything like that. So from that side, hopefully this can get resolved. And because of the fact that we have so many EVE projects, and EVE is a heart of us, we for sure will continue our projects. We got the voice recognition, but of course it all depends on how they resolve this issue.
Yeah. So you don't consider yourself done, Aderix?
We will be closing the casino's chance-based engines.
I like how specific that is.
Wait,
Even
what?
if I'm given the option to come back, I'd probably close it all down too and not continue. Obviously, I have to by November 8th if I came back, but I mean, I wouldn't continue with other apps.
Well, I mean, for example, our voice recognition software is a data tool. You know, I mean, it's still benefiting the player base. We have Academy of EVE, which is a learning-based system that helps people tackle the steep learning curve of EVE. You know, EOC that's revamped, that was waiting on the launch of EVE Casino, and this way we were going to do a launch stream, et cetera, et cetera.
Because a lot of your projects aren't really about gambling. That's just one of your projects, right? I mean, the other stuff is about kind of building community and things like that, right?
Yes, we started EVE Casino to fund the Academy of EVE project, which basically was, well, in this sense, still probably will. We'll still have to figure everything out. But basically offers players certain benefits for learning and stuff like that to really kind of minimize that curve. That's why our casino, for example, allowed alliances to run their own casino earning 90%. So for us, it wasn't about making ISK. It was really about having the individual create their own casinos. But we didn't even get a chance to open up. We were going to open up on the 26th. So sadly, we won't even get to see the day of light of all the engines. And we have
so
live
sorry.
poker and yeah.
But go ahead, Ash.
One of the things that kind of distresses me is that there seems to be an incredibly broad definition to chance-based mechanics, or what they're ruling as falling under the purview of this. For instance, EveBet does gambling related to betting on things like the Alliance tournament, and they specifically say that they are allowing this. You know, they're doing this so far out, or on the 8th, so that way the Alliance tournament can finish and all of the outstanding bets that are on the Alliance tournament can be resolved. But at the same time, I don't know if I would necessarily consider betting on an Alliance tournament to be a chance-based gambling, right? Because it's theoretically, you would want to think that the Alliance tournament would be skill-based. But it seems like CCP very much so is kind of, a lot of the changes that they're making, especially in regards to Ascension, is very broad and blanketing huge swaths of rules.
Yeah, and I think it's more of a climate, but the RMT did put a sharp focus on it, because I think the thing that everybody's upset, at least from what I understand from the bankers who've worked at I1ISC and other people who are affiliated with this sort of thing, the writing was on the wall. A lot of them predicted they wouldn't last another year, but they don't like how this went down. This was too fast. It locked everybody up. There's a lot of people burned that had nothing to do with anything that was illicit RMT. So that's really where the bummer is for a lot of people. Like they were too severe instead of warning people so that they could get out, or at least they could pay off the people who had actually had money in the system and things like that. That was one of the criticisms.
Yeah. Well, the argument, like to make the argument about betting on the Alliance tournament, well, they make the same argument for betting on real world sporting events or things like fantasy football. As far as the regulators are concerned, it is a game of chance. It's a more subjective with the booking of it, but it is still ultimately, a chance.
Mm-hmm.
One team is going to win, one team is going to lose.
And even in real life, you get situations where people find loopholes and ways around gambling and make it seem like it's not gambling. They're going to have to go through all that.
I have a feeling that's why CCP made the verbiage so broad, right? So if
Mhm.
you go up against the spirit of the idea, they just have the ability to ban you. Like I was talking with someone earlier, and he said, "Oh, this would suck for like intra-alliance tournaments where you have to like buy in like 100 million to enter, and just within the alliance, you like fight, create one-on-ones or whatever." That I'm like nearly willing to bet a liver on that they're not going to enforce any rules for that. But if you try and do something fancy with a different website, trying to I don't know, gamble on something that's EVE related, then they're gonna use that to shut you down hard.
That's actually what bothers me the most out of all of this, is that, as I mentioned in the preview or in the introduction, a lot of this started with alliances running raffles for people, and depending on how you interpret it, that would fall under as a EULA breach. And I even asked Fuzzy Steve directly, because the CSM had kind of an emergency meeting with CCP after this happened. And he said that likely wouldn't be something that they go after, but that's not a really great answer, right? Because, we have spies, we have members in organizations that are not looking out for that organization's best interest. And so if there's even the threat that they can make that kind of attack, it makes it so that sort of activity just isn't possible. And while I'm sure that people will be able to figure out ways of kind of surviving in a world in which that isn't possible, I do feel like there is a bit of throwing out the baby with the bathwater in this move. I also really hate that idea of like, oh yeah, no, it's probably a breach, but they probably won't do anything about it. Like, I hate that logic. Like, either something is against the rules or it's not. I don't like to run the risk of like skirting the fine line just so that somebody who doesn't like me can use that as an attack vector against me.
One of the questions is, did PL get banned, which is, I think, meant to be a joke, but Killer B, who was a bank for I1ISC, did lose all his liquid ISK, all but 1.5 trillion. Yeah, billion of it.
Oh, they left some?
They left him 1.5 billion out of hundreds of billions.
Yeah, he was I guess a junior banker or something for I1ISC, and like they did with all the other bankers, as far as I'm aware, they just removed all the ISK from all of his accounts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And the nice thing about it is he's all for it.
yeah, he's definitely like he's not really sour about it at all. He doesn't have to pay for ships anyway as an FC, so
Yeah,
I think just some of his Vanquisher fittings maybe a little bit cheaper. Maybe he'll have a Tech 2 Vanquisher instead, an Officer Vanquisher.
Well,
So.
apparently they didn't touch that, so he still has
I
it.
I want to point out something, because a lot of people are talking about I1ISC and funding the war and all that stuff. Like, and I'm not trying to accuse you of being a liar or anything like that, but let's even assume that the accusations are well founded and there was RMT being done by I1ISC. That still does not delegitimize the war, okay? Because there's a big difference between obtaining ISK illegally to fund a war. They obtained their ISK legally through these gambling websites, which were allowed at that time, and they used that ISK to fund a war. Now, that is true regardless of what they did with some of the rest of their ISK. As I said in my video, if they had X amount of ISK, if 60% of it went to funding a war, 30% of it went to operations, and 20% of it went to RMT, that doesn't mean that RMT funded the war. It's just that there was an institution that funded a war and was doing RMT. Again, I'm not trying to say that EVE is lying. In
RMT would have
claims.
had nothing to do with it, though, because if you're RMTing, that's a totally different process than making money off banking or a game of chance inside the game, which is what does generate that amount of money, and it can get used any way they want, whoever has the ability to generate that kind of money.
That's correct.
So it doesn't have anything to do with it, but it does beg the question: should Decline be given back to Goonswarm?
People love my math.
Well, I don't.
No, there's no RMT. They're just claiming it, man. But there's no way to prove it either way.
I don't think we want it back. We have better space now.
My point is that historically, this has kind of happened before, where like major empires get implicated in RMT. I can't remember exact names, but whenever any organization or any person accumulates a ISK above a certain amount, accusations of RMT occur, and a certain percentage of those people get caught or implicated or convicted, quote unquote, of those things. That doesn't make their other actions in the sandbox illegitimate. It just makes it so that they have to be removed because they violated the EULA. So I'm saying that to make sure that we're clear, because I feel like people are taking the notion of RMT and kind of broadly sweeping that over a lot of things that it's not related with.
Yeah, but I'll counter you on that, because when you look back, a lot of things about RMT were being thrown over at the Imperium, right? And the fact that they were lily white and weren't RMTing. Now, I'm not saying they were, but now you have some sort of vindication to the Imperium when they said, hey, these guys got to be RMTing, or they are RMTing, right?
I don't see how that has anything to do with the amount of money that was used to dislodge you guys from the north, but
I agree.
But I
agree with that.
But also, and I'm not dismissing RMT. I don't think it's serious. That's a personal belief, but other people do, and so I take that seriously. But these were permabans there were permabans handed out in November as well for 25 people associated with Iwan ISK, weren't they? Was that what they were classified as?
Yeah, they were all reverted, though, except for one.
Right. So it's not what I'm trying to say is it's not unheard of that these severe punishments are taken back after an investigation happens, because CCP bans first, investigates, and then unbans later.
And keeps all the ISK.
And
that's true. However, in the past, if I remember correctly, they do the initial ban, they don't outright say it's a permanent ban. Whereas, as far as I know, they have said it this time.
I may be wrong about. Well, Eep, you haven't been banned. You weren't banned last time, were you?
No, this is the first time I'm ever banned from EVE.
Well, I don't know what's different. The only thing I think that's majorly different is there's nothing worth coming back to, unless Aderix has some special formula of something he's going to build that kind of can keep a lot of the work. I mean, what's worth coming back to if you get banned this harshly?
Well,
yeah, I agree. Nothing to come back to, especially since casinos are going to be removed. I mean, there are ways to make it like player to player without a central hub, but
that's a lot of risk involved, and you probably don't want to do that. But I think on I hate to kind of say it this way, but I am kind of glad that it happened now versus when we would have opened. Because of our structure, we were heavily focused around alliances running casinos. The whole entire system, because we realized that as the powerhouse running the engine, we didn't need to have all the ISK. We didn't need to have advertising. I mean, we already had like the 10% remaining for advertising budget. And allowing 90% of the profits generated to go to alliances basically could fund war machines. And depending on, if you have 1,000 members, they all go and gamble on your casino. You make 90% of that. I mean, you could literally print ISK. So the concept was I'm glad that it kind of, if this was going to happen anyways, that it did happen when it did before, we had all these alliances start up their casinos. I mean, I doubt that they would have, wiped all the alliances balances and things like that. But I'm just kind of glad that it happened now versus later.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point that Eric's talked about is I've had this conversation with some alliance leaders at eVegas 2 years ago, in fact. We were talking about the notion of casinos being an undisruptible ISK source. You don't have to own space, you don't have to have a ratting tax, you don't have to do anything. You just make ISK out of essentially nothing that happens out of the game, and nobody can do anything about it. They can offer competition and have better games, but you can just retort a little bit, change your style a little bit, and you'll still be printing ISK. And that is one of the things that I hated, absolutely hated, about the gambling mechanics, right? Because
So,
there's nothing you could do about it.
Let me
but
say something about that first. Now that the war is over, real quick about the war.
no, that's
Something I couldn't reveal after the war was over. It's just how broke we got.
Yeah, no, I know you
recovering.
guys
Really?
literally ran yourselves into the ground, right? But that's because you funded literally half of the game into and you hilariously overpaid. And I'm just like, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that was pretty cool. But
It's
you
just to make
hilariously
sure they
overpaid
stayed.
for services and stuff.
Just
So
to
I'm
make
not
sure they
shocked
stayed
you
in
guys
place.
ran out of,
It's pretty.
They paid government
before
prices.
I forget, just to kind of expand on that too. That's exactly why there were so many people upset about the way that gambling sites could just generate ISK, and there would be no control to that degree. So this is one of the major reasons that we focused around. Okay, well, how can we distribute that power across the board? I mean, if you have two people that have two casinos running, having those machines, you even out the playing field, and that's kind of what EVE Casino's whole concept was built around, giving everybody that opportunity to print ISK.
And I'm not sure it was. I'm sure it wasn't total altruism either. Like, you guys were going to make a myth of this as well. And as a group that operates within the game, there would be nothing I could do to stop you from doing that. I know a lot of alliances out there, small alliances, not like huge alliances, even low-sec alliances, that were entirely bankrolled because they had one person that was fortunate enough to be a banker for ISK or a banker for EVE or whatever have you. They could just bankroll their entire alliance no matter what as one rich individual. It's really cool, but there would be nothing I could do to stop that if I wanted to. Now, I'm of the opinion that an alliance doesn't die when it runs out of ISK. It dies when their morale is broken, but still, the idea that you could be funded forever and there's nothing I can do about it was always very irksome to me.
Yeah, I agree. There is something about that, definitely. But I mean, like I said, we were limited. If Goons had fought back 1%, then we may have had something to worry about. Because the funds were not unlimited. We were going down.
Oh, really? That was. I thought they were unlimited because you started making more money after the war began.
Yeah, at first. At first, yes. But then eventually it started going down even more. And yeah, we definitely... I had to say we were making more and still breaking even just to make sure that their morale would not come back.
Oh, but that wasn't true?
No, we were definitely losing. We were hemorrhaging ISK. It was to the point where I was throwing my last 2 or 3 trillion at it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was fun. It was fun that he came out and said that we couldn't be stopped. When if he would have just tried, he didn't even know. If he would have just tried, it was all that made a game. That's all it was.
Well, I think too that comment was more related to the view that SOV is essentially broken at this point, right? Not so much whether you were spending money or you had more money to spend.
Yeah, there were a lot of things, like the mechanics change, but people adapt, and so the people who were attacking Goons, they adapted as well before they attacked. So that excuse of mechanics changing and things being broken, they're broken on both sides.
Well, I think the argument is that they're broken toward the attacker. And if you've got 75% of EVE coming at you, you really can't win, right?
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
I really
Well, I don't think that that's a matter of mechanics. I think that if you've got 75% of EVE coming after you, you're going to die regardless of the mechanics.
Yeah, the blob wins, right? And in despite of what CCP has done, the blob will win every time.
I think if you've got a lot of Eve attacking you and a really poorly formed poorly formed coalition, sorry, stumbling over my words, you'll kind of eat it. Like
Well,
I don't think it's really soft mechanics that really was the death knell at all.
I
Right.
wonder.
All right, no,
I
no.
wonder how.
We won't go
on the
back any
point that
further,
is-
though. Sorry, Ash. We don't want to go back any further with that. We want to talk about what happened today instead of going back to that last spring. And I wanted to say, because I don't think we've hit it well enough, but how is this going to affect, because I know there was a lot of pessimism this morning, because I woke up to it, from Crossing Zebras and EVE News 24 and EVE NT were all really had the wind taken out of their sails this morning. How do you think this is going to play out for all the people that these guys supported with ISK? You know, they gave ISK to streamers so that streamers could stream without worrying about replacing their ships. Stuff like that. What do you think?
I don't actually think that that's going to have as big of an impact on streamers as people would expect. I know a lot of streamers have gotten a lot of funds from their viewership, and you know, a lot of them have kind of gotten to establish their own ways of making ISK. It's definitely been advantageous, and I think the biggest change is going to be like brand new players who are coming out and checking out the game via a stream, because I know Iron Bank would drop in on those like Chris Kringle and just like start handing out plexus to people. And so that probably won't happen as much. But I've also, I go in and I watch a lot of streams every once in a while, and I have not seen a streamer struggling for ISK for more than an hour without at least somebody dropping them a few $100 million. So I don't necessarily think it's going to be that impactful for those people. I think it's going to be a bigger impact on larger scale things, EVE, Charity Keeps Stars, those huge things that require massive amounts of ISK at the ready to do.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
pretty sad.
I posed this question on Reddit earlier today to see like what would be a really good solution to all of this, and who is going to get hurt the most. The streamers, as Asharathi was mentioning, I think they'll be fine, right? They almost if you got more than like 10 viewers, you basically could ask Iron for 10 billion ISK a month, and he'd give you between 5 and 20 bill, depending who you were. If you just put like, I want ISK or now
My
EVE Casino
God.
on the bottom right of his thing. And so, I mean, whatever, like that's the thing. I think, as he mentioned, streamers will be fine by and large, especially the streamers that are very good at providing content. Like I know back when Laz streamed, he got a lot of funding from very rich viewers and whales and stuff like that. And I know Sutonia, an amazing streamer, Zarvox, another streamer that's a big name. They can get lots of ISK no matter what, so they're not going to be hurting. But I do think a lot of the sort of the groups that do more EVE community stuff, like even Crossing Zebras, you can argue that back in the day, before EVE Casinos pumped out a lot of ISK to podcasters or fan site havers or whatever, they still existed, right? But you guys have to remember that's when EVE News 24 was considered basically the top. It was, and I don't want to
He laughs.
poo-poo all over EVE News 24. They were considered the best of the best. And after this influx of cash, you can't argue that the quality didn't improve. Obviously, there are lots of low-quality sites getting a lot of money. It's not going to be a bad thing when those are gone. But the high-quality sites, like Crossing Zebras, did an amazing job with what they have, and they grew amazingly well thanks to this influx of money. Now they're going to have to come up with a solution for how are they going to continue to fund all of this. And there are some really interesting ideas out there, some very strange implications for how that'll work.
Yeah, I think that's being discussed now, actually, this weekend on the Proper Talking in Stations show. That's Saturday, 1 p.m. UTC. We'll have Elise back, and we'll also have Nash Cadaver from EVE NT, and we'll talk a little bit about how they plan to fund projects into the future. We're also going to talk about the Alliance tournament that's happening this weekend. We're going into the finals.
I have to point out that I have been corrected in the comments by Rain Chocolate and a few other people. Apparently, so my experience is mostly with newer people checking out the streams, because that's who the people I drop in on to try to help out. But apparently established streams have more difficulty getting donations. I don't know if that's because people assume that they have official sponsorship, but with the removal of support of EVEBet, that I know a lot of people that are part of and supported by EVE RMT are kind of in full-blown panic at the moment. So
Well,
I think that the EVE community is very tenacious and creative, and I think that will create more and different solutions, but it definitely does provide a sort of crisis.
I do want to say the job that they did with the Alliance tournament was stellar. It was only marked with the problem that the EVE Bet logo was as big as EVE's logo, and to me that just stunk. And actually, I didn't watch it because of that. I just thought it was in the wrong place. Like, gambling and EVE sports, or gambling and sports in general, do go together, but it doesn't mean that somebody has to like it. And so I was thinking that I would rather have an amateur show like, you know, TMC's without any of that advertising involved. So I think if there's a way to fund them a different way, like even just people, you know, giving money and donations, I think that would be the better way to go, just to keep that other stuff out.
There are some interesting questions that we can ask with like the idea with funding people like EVE RMT who have shown to do a really good job, or even like an up and coming group that might need a little bit of ISK to start paying writers or whatever projects they want to do. And that is, if CCP did just take away on the order of what, like 30 trillion ISK, and who knows how many plexes, who knows how many injectors or assets or whatever, would people be okay with using that banned ISK to sort of reimburse or reward other EVE community pages?
That's actually a really interesting point. So one of the things that's important to note is that this ISK and the Plex that are seized from RMT, that's the assets that are used to do giveaways. Like for instance, when sometimes CCP does like a convoy of their guys and lets you go and blow them up, and they've got Plex and skill injectors or whatever in their cargo, and they use the seized ISK to fund those things because they don't want to just inject a whole bunch of Plex into the market. So they have to use stuff that's been seized in order to do those kinds of things. It also allows them to do sales and other stuff like that. So this ISK will eventually be kind of seeded back in via various things. The other thing that's worth noting is that on the last high drag, which has sadly not been put out yet, Firu went to TwitchCon, and he said that he talked to CCP Affinity and CCP Guard, and that their eyes were opened, that they did not realize how big of a deal Twitch was, how big of a deal what we do with Twitch, and like how Twitch helps other games get kind of on the map, and you know, what it takes to do well in that. And that they have acknowledged the fact that they have not done a good job with supporting people who support the game, and that they're interested in doing more stuff involved with that. So it's very possible that they do have other plans to help kind of bridge the gap into this new world that doesn't require always having EVE Bet's logo on everything.
All right, Aderix, you have some experience with Twitch, right? Because you have a streaming channel, eoc.tv.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And
well, at least with the man, yeah.
Correction, Mimic, not Affinity. Sorry, thank you.
It's okay. So what do you think about the impact this is going to have on people that would have been sponsored? You would have sponsored, actually, alliances, enabling them to make their own money. You would have basically opened up a platform for alliances to make their own casino, making their own money for their own members, which already is kind of like democratizing the process. But do you have supported, you know, content creators?
Yeah, well, EVE Casino took on, you know, Christopher Wow, Finn, Lysis, Zoravox, Bjorn B, Nordumshine, like all right before the turn. I think it was like a week ago that we started. They started switching over their logos and stuff. You know, because in a sense, we've always believed, and we still do, that the streamers are the front line of new players of EVE. And I know that sounds a little weird, but as new players go into the game, and you know, they do the little tutorial things, and look at Twitch. And so for us, it was high sponsors, you know, giving as much as we can, that kind of thing, to really enhance their streams. But in the end, I think the streams will be perfectly okay. And we'll figure things out for funding. So
you don't see this? This is not going to affect your work.
which part?
The closing or hampering of your casino, which was going to generate money or ISK for the rest of your projects, you're going to get around it somehow. You're going to continue.
Well, no, I mean the casino is shut down. Like there's, I mean, we're not going to we're not going to violate any of the terms of use or EULA or anything like that. So that part of the system is done. But
sure, I meant your other projects.
Our other projects are still on the board. They still go out to benefit the different players from, EOC TV, Academy of EVE, Mila, our voice recognition software, and things like that are still on the board.
And once again, EEP, you're going to try to figure out, you haven't figured out everything because you're still letting all this information settle, right? I imagine.
Pretty much, yeah. Only thing I figured out is that I'm just so fucking happy that my mind is free from the clutter of coding I want is.
Well, there must be an upside to it.
Yeah, definitely. And now I'm free to do some other shit that I've been planning on doing without having to worry. I mean, iOneIS wasn't making me much more than $40 a month, if that, from some donations, and then the AdSense was paying the server itself. It sometimes wouldn't even pay itself. So it's kind of a free break for me. I'm more than happy to close it down, but giving people their ISK back is what I want, because I have a lot of friends that didn't get their ISK, a lot of clients that didn't get their ISK. It just sucks.
Didn't want that gambling site anyways?
Nah, it's gone.
No, I'm a former creative professional, right? And so I used to do a lot of design. I had all my work on a drive, and I was putting it all together on a drive and moving it, and it failed. So I lost like a huge amount of my work of record, and I never felt better.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. It feels liberating, definitely. I mean, if I were actually RMTing and all that good shit, then maybe I'd be like, oh my god. But it's just the people, man. They need their ISK.
I also think that they didn't just go out and do this. To some degree, I believe that CCP does have a good reason for the things they do. And I truly believe that they're doing that for some good purpose. I mean, that's what I have to hope on. But I hope they really review our case and realize, hey, these guys weren't even open, and we weren't utilizing any kind of tools that are mentioned in the DLA that we could have violated. So I do hope that they do a very thorough investigation in that regard.
Yeah, so Manor, I've got a question for the guys that are designing the sites and everything, right? We know that you couldn't continue using the Crest authentication to do the sites. That's explicitly stated even in that before they changed the EULA, right? In fact, I personally asked CCP about it, got a response, absolutely can't use it for gambling sites. When the in-game browser went away, which I know iOneISK used in some capacity, what were you guys going to use to authenticate to your sites in EVE? I mean, what we're going to do technically, just curiously, right?
For us?
I already updated mine, actually.
Are you asking us? Or
yeah, I'm asking you guys. I mean, it's just a technical question because I come from a technical background, right?
Absolutely. We had a very similar system in regards to what EVE had for mail, because that's the only true way we were going to do it with in-game chats. So bankers would go in, basically verify the codes and authorize them online. And because, of course, you can't connect the SSO or the Crest or anything like that to the casino. And we made sure of that. So that's why this whole thing is very confusing. And I'm sure this is just some big mistake.
Yeah, I was going to use multiple methods. One was creating a contract to iOneISK. The other one was EVE mails. Somebody receives a code from iOneISK and they EVE mail it to the character, and then they would be able to log in or register. And then API keys you can still use.
Yeah, because you go onto evecasino.net and you click on register sign up account. It's going to ask you your character name, etc. And as you deposit ISK, you go basically verify. You go in game, you get a code after you log in. Go into the in game, you combo a banker, you post that code, and you can get approved. So, but we never had even a chance to display that. So.
Yeah, I didn't think you were using the crest in the new site, but yeah, I was just when I saw that authentication and that sort of verification of users, I was curious how you guys were going to do it going forward. Now, I will share with you guys, this is not a surprise to me that that they made the change to the EULA now, and it's certainly not a surprise that they did it before the end of the year. They're messing with the EULA, right?
Yeah, I'm not
It's too
surprised
much
either.
risk to CCP for this.
Well, additionally, they're already, I mean, they had their lawyers poring over it to change all the stuff for alpha clones. So even if they wanted to do this, they could have earmarked this as early as World War B and be like, you know what, this is kind of crazy. We're not going to let it happen anymore. You know, you don't necessarily, as a business, you don't necessarily want to just abort the war in the middle of it for various reasons. But after the fact, it's just be like, you know what, before this gets crazy, we're going to make sure to change it. We've already got our lawyers that are going to have to look at the TOS and the EULA for the big change to our business structure. Let's just throw this in there too.
Yeah, and I think there's suspicion that perhaps CCP had been already told that this was a bad thing. I think perhaps the casino war is something that really brought it to the forefront to them that this might be something that's not good for the game. I'm not sure, just speculating, right?
Yeah, I think that if they had done it in the middle of a war, I think it would have been extremely disruptive and there would have been even bigger problems. But after the fact, you have to realize that a world in which the biggest power bases are these gambling sites isn't really the best world to introduce all these alpha clones into, right? So it's time to clean house.
They could be
But see,
leveraged.
that's why we were going to push out the powerhouses to alliances. That's like the whole concept that we were running.
Still, I think the mechanic of having free accounts sit there was could launder money through those guys to no end. You know.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing as well. If you could
understand that risk, right? As soon as you say the word launder, right, you go into a very deep abyss with U.S. banking, right? Should
Texas
they
law
lose
and
it?
all that.
Well, not Texas law. This is U.S. federal law.
Right.
So you come down into the OCC and banking and regulations there. Technically, if CCP were to lose one of these cases on this gambling, Amazon could not be allowed to sell Plex. Do you guys understand that, right? They would not be able to process the transaction. And that would be devastating to CCP.
Right. I mean, there is an exchange rate. There is a business practices outside the game, and this does go into a murky area of gambling, and it even gets into what Matani likes to point out is gambling for underage people. So there's definitely a lot more considerations than just the power struggles that happen inside the game. That said, we're going to wrap up the show. It's been an hour, and we probably could go another hour, but we're going to end it here just to make sure people can listen to this without getting bored or whatever. I do want to give Aderix and Eep a little more time, though, to say anything they wanted to say about this whole thing.
Eep, go ahead.
Yeah, let me throw it to you guys without a question. Sorry.
I just from my wax pen, so I'm like.
Did you want to go ahead? Or do you want me to?
You can go ahead. I think I've said most of what I wanted to say. I mean, it just sucks for the people, honestly. Let
me just ask this one question, though. I'm kind of curious about it. Do you feel that you were treated unfairly compared to EVE.bet? And if so, why?
I've always been treated unfairly by CCP. I mean, always. I mean, this is why I've always said that they have had something against us, because they always have had something against us, especially Peligro, who seems to have a lot of hatred towards any banker.
Well, why do you think you're treated unfairly from them?
I think Summer Blink had connections with CCP at first.
You mean EVE.bet?
No, Summer Blink. It was back from way back then.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel that they had connections with CCP, and while having those connections, they constantly tried to bring Evilopolis back then at the time down using fake PR and getting GMs.
Evilopolis was your site before I Want ISK, correct?
Yeah. 10,000 ISK per raffle ticket. That was cool.
So you thought you were treated unfairly compared to Summer Blink long ago. Do you think you're treated unfairly now compared to EVE.bet?
Of course. And one bit of proof that they treated Summer Blink better than my system is that you could link Summer Blink's website in the forums, and when you clicked it or anybody clicked it, it would go straight to Summer Blink. But if you linked any other website where I want ISK, it would say you're leaving the forums. Are you sure? It might be a potentially dangerous website. So there was favoritism, and there has been, and I believe even now there definitely is. And I mean, I can't see the incentive because they're closing down all casino sites. There probably doesn't need to be an incentive, really.
Hendrix?
Yeah. So I can't speak, of course, for I1ISK or anything, but for Evil at Work and all of our projects, I do hope that at least this, from our point of view, gets resolved to some degree. So at least our other fan sites that we spent years building can flourish and can come to light, especially because we have not been open or anything like that. So I am hoping that whoever is in charge of that mechanic, because I do believe that they're going to do a very good investigation there and realize, hey, EVE Casino is shut down. They don't have the EVE SSO. They are not using Crest and all that good stuff. So that Mila, our voice recognition software, Academy of EVE, and the other projects that we have lined up can all benefit and enhance the experience of EVE Online. So I do hope that they resolve that.
I was actually making 2.0, even though I1ISK 1.0 isn't making me any money. I was making 2.0 with the potential for it to make more money because it was going to offer remove ads if you donate, and a few other like aesthetic changes if you were to donate.
So it'd be a membership kind of thing?
Yeah, sort of.
Yeah.
So I was working towards making something for myself, but whatever. I'll do something else.
All right. Well, that brings us to the close of the show. And I want to thank Eep and Ederix for showing up on day one of this whole thing. It's a ton of bricks to wake up to. And I also want to thank Ashdrathi and Elise. Sorry, the store's closing. And Urziel and Eric, actually, for coming in and helping out technically, for showing up. Anything else you guys want to say? Somebody want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to point out that especially with these agencies like EVEBet being shut down, that means that donations from players to organizations that you believe in is even more important. And I want to highlight specifically my good friend Mike Azariah from On Grid runs the big school bus, and he is currently doing a fundraiser in order to get supplies because for those of you who do not know, Matt, he goes between all of the newbie areas and he provides free ships and advice to new players getting into the game. With the alpha changes coming, he anticipates massive increase in his demands, and he was hoping to court people like EVEBet and I1ISK and stuff like that for financing. He obviously does not have that as an option anymore, and so he wanted me to ask you guys, or to bring it to you guys, that if you are if you do have some extra ISK and you want to support the new bros, he is a very good outlet to do so. So Mike Azariah, Magic School Bus, good thing to donate ISK to.
Yeah, also Care for Kids and B4R.
Right. Yes, I mean, yeah, there's plenty of good agencies, but Mike Azariah specifically asked me to mention it, so there you go.
Let's see, Urziel or Elise or Eric, do you guys have anything you want to say? To wrap up, plug anything?
I'm just going to say thanks, Matterall. This is a great conversation. I love it when we have civil conversations about this stuff. It's fantastic. Everybody, thank you.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I always like coming on here.
Yeah, this was really well done. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to talk everybody.
No problem. We're all talking here, and this is actually quite relaxing. I don't know. Maybe it's the weed.
Yeah, could be. Could be. It's been known to do that. All right. Well,
I have no recollection of that, Senator. I don't know what you're talking about.
I do want
My mind is free.
Yeah. Listen, I think I know where you're at, and I don't think it's a bad place. I think that freedom is unbelievable. I do want to say one thing. I did have an old friend resub. He put a Plex on his account because he was really happy that the lopsidedness of financing of wars, whether it was real or just imaginary, had pushed him out of the game, and he's resubbed and he wants to play because he feels now that in-game economic prowess can be earned, which I thought was fascinating. Right. Well, that wraps up our special show on a Wednesday for Talking in Stations. Please catch our regular show at 1 p.m. UTC, and that is a new time for us. So that is European time. And I'm the only one suffering waking up at 5 in the morning, unless Ash up there wants to join me.
I'm going to try, and we'll see how it works.
Okay, good. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching Talking in Stations. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.
See ya.
What?
Later.